Hi guys, just want to explain this SQL assignment to you, or how we're going to go through, and I wanted to walk through all of the queries here from select basics, select from world, and then select from Nobel. So this is Nobel Prize winners. It's on here on SQL Zoo. You can't tell that, but if I just type in, I'm here on this, I'll just type in SQL Zoo, and we'll get SQL Zoo. And then we're going to start with this select basics. Okay, now we're going to start here with this one around the countries of the world. And what I like about this is it's going to have, this SQL Zoo is a very forgiving engine for being able to write queries, and you can see what happens here. So I'm going to run select name, comma, population. So we've got the name, the continent, the area, the population, and then area is in square kilometers. GDP is just in dollars. So if I write this, this is going to be the name. In fact, let's write the name, continent, population from world, where name is equal to France. We'll run it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. Now it's telling me it's a wrong answer because there's too many columns. It also wants it to be Germany. Okay, and they only want me to grab the population. So if I just grab, I'm going to delete this name, continent, population. That's what it wants. It gives me kind of this ugly smiley face. Okay, so, and then I would also, right now this is okay. I would probably, if we were strictly doing this, I would make these each on their own different line there. Okay, so population is going to be the columns that I'm returning. From tells me which table, and then this is how I'm going to query or say, hey, I want it for where name is equal to Germany or name is equal to France. Okay, and I could do name, continent. Right, so now I have the name, the continent, and the population for Germany and France. Now, so I'm going to go ahead and restore the default. Now, the other thing is, if I just hit an asterisk there, this just gives me, this is going to return everything. Okay, so starting with Afghanistan, so I've got name, continent, area, population, GDP, the capital. This is the top level domain for their internet, and then this is the, there's a link to it, an image of the flag. Okay, so I could also do from world where name is equal to Germany. Okay, two things to note here. One is it has to be single quotes. If I do double quotes, it's not going to work. The other one is, let's just see if it is case sensitive. So if I put Germany in lowercase, and it'll find it just fine. So those are things, sometimes they differ across, you know, in SQL Server or MySQL or Postgres, that Microsoft Access, that can differ a little bit. Okay, this one is a really useful function, which is this in. So if I hit this, it's got a, it says there's an error. Oh, I need the, okay. Now, I usually get in the habit, most query engines, so SQL Server and MySQL, require us to put a semicolon at the end of the phrase or at the end of the query. And so I always try and get in that habit because otherwise it'll bomb out. But the alternative to typing a list would be to say where name is equal to Brazil, or name is equal to China, or name is equal to India, and that gets very old very quickly. And so that's why there is this in function. So I'm going to say where name is in, okay, and now I just put in, so it wants me to put in Sweden, put the semicolon at the end. Okay, now, and then you can't have the and. Okay, so now the most common mistake is that you're missing a single quote somewhere. So if we threw this one, it's going to say check, there's an error somewhere between, you know, by Norway, Denmark, So that's a very common one. My most common mistake is that I'll forget this last one right there. Okay. The other is that they have to be separated by commas. So that's grabbing Sweden, but it doesn't realize those are two different countries, and now it'll grab all three of those. Okay, so that's very common. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and hit restore default. So this wants to use between, and let me show you this first. It's going to say select name area from world where area. So it's the same thing as saying it's I could say it's greater than or equal to 200,000 and area is less than or equal to 250,000. Now, one of the limitations of SQL is you can't put commas in there. So you just have to, like when we start getting into millions and billions, you just have to be counting 6 zeros, 9 zeros, 12 zeros, whatever. Okay. So this is giving me, this is the way I sort of prefer to do it because I know, do I want it to be greater than or equal to? But where they want you to do it is where area between 200, 123, and 250. Okay, so now I only have to type area once. Okay, and that works. So if I were to change this just to be 300,000, just so we got a different number, so we can see it move. 250, 123. Okay, so those ones I think are pretty easy. Now we're going to go to the select from world. Okay, so this is going to give us some more. I think there's 14 queries here that we're going to write. Okay, now often it's useful. I'm going to click on this, read the notes about this table. So this is telling us that there are the 7 fields. These are the ones that we saw: name, continent, area, population. This is telling us varchar just means that it is a string, like there's text, and then these decimals are telling us the numbers, and an extract, and then it's telling us that area is measured in square kilometers. Okay, it should tell us how it's measuring GDP because there's different ways, but are you using it in current dollars? Are you using it purchasing power parity? So that's PPP. There's different ways to calculate that, but we're not going to get into that. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to select from. So this just says, I'm just going to hit this, which just says, hey, we've got the name, the continent, and the population. Okay, so this says, show the names for the countries that have a population of at least 200 million. So 200 million has 8 zeros. Okay, so I'm going to say where population is greater than or equal to 200 million. In fact, I would actually want to have the name and the population. I don't know why it doesn't do me any good to just have the names, but that's where it has. Now, in this one, he puts a video in on explaining how to do this per capita GDP. So per capita GDP is you take the GDP and divide it by the population, right? Hence it's GDP per person. So we can do, let me show you a couple things here. So this gives us the name, the population, and the GDP. I could also put this as, I could put population divided by millions, 1, 123, 123. Okay, and so this is now just taking this and giving me, so I've got a population here of 25.5 million, which is easier to read this way. And I could also do the same thing as GDP divided by 1, 123, 123, 123, so that's in billions. Okay, that would give me so I've got population in millions, population or GDP in billions. Okay, but what they want us to do is I'm gonna do population, GDP, and then I'm gonna do population or GDP divided by population, and I'll put those together. Okay, so that gives me my GDP per capita is right here. So GDP per population. Now, I could also just do it as, so what it wants is, all it wants is the name and this GDP per capita. with a population of at least 200 million. So I've got 200, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now it'll pop up. Okay, so the other thing to notice is I can give it what is called an alias. So I could call this, I could say as GDP underscore PC for per capita. And the only thing that has changed here is what it calls it. So I could call it as GDP per capita. Okay, so nothing, the values haven't changed. The only thing that has changed in here is this GDP is what it's calling it as the top. And so everything here to the right, so that's as, and then this GDP per capita, that's called the alias, and that just gives me a name to be able to refer to. Okay, so I've gone down here to number 4, and it says South American millions. So it says show the name and population. So the population in millions for countries in South America. So continent is going to be equal to South America. Divide the population by 1 million to get populations in millions. So I could do select, let's do name, population from world, okay, where continent is equal to. Now, you'll notice I have where as a keyword. So I normally capitalize it, but this engine doesn't care, and so it doesn't matter. But I'm going to say where continent is equal to South America. All right. From. Okay, so that's giving me, it's saying the wrong answer, and that's just because it doesn't want, it's only going to want this population in millions, and it only wants, or wants it in millions. So I'm going to say, divide the population by 1 million. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and copy and paste this, or I could put in it's 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and it didn't matter that I put it, and it actually doesn't matter if there's a space between population and million. So this would work just fine as well. That would be just fine, and I could say as pop underscore millions. Okay, and I like that. So that it's giving me this, so all that's done is change the title. And the reason sometimes people name it is it's easier to refer to, especially if I wanted to sort this by, if I wanted to say order by pop millions descending. Okay, now I could put Brazil up top because it's the largest, then Colombia, then Argentina, and I could do ascending, which is also the default. So if I just type in that, it's gonna order by. So that's how you sort. We're gonna get to that in a minute, but that's why sometimes you name it. It's easy for me to refer to it later on by that. Okay, but this is the piece that we care about. So right now it's sorting by name alphabetically. Okay, so now this says show the name and population for Germany, Italy, and France, Germany, and Italy. So this one we could just do select name, population from world where name in. So we could do the or thing, but it's easier if I put France, Germany, Italy. Okay, now I need to go back and put in the little single quotes. Italy. Okay, I'm going to put the semicolon at the end. Okay, so now it's giving me name and population. So this is using that in statement or in function. Okay, so this one, we're going to use this like function. Okay, so I'm going to share a screen here in just 1 second on how to use, these are called wildcards, and how to use like. So I've jumped to a page at W3 Schools with like. I'll put this link in the description. There's also one on the SQL Zoo that talks about the like, but I like this one better. And so MySQL, which is the version that this thing is running, has two operators that I can use this percentage sign to represent 0 to many characters, and then I can do this underscore. And so where you say where customer name is like a percentage sign, that's going to find anything that starts with an A. If I say percentage sign A, that means it has to end with an A. If I were to put it within percentage signs, that would find an A anywhere in the name. As they mentioned down here, if I put or within it, it's going to find the values that have OR anywhere in it. And then I can use this thing with the underscore to find, hey, if I somehow needed to find that it had an R in the second position or the third position, and this one says, hey, you can find it that has at least A, and then it's at least 2 characters in length or at least 3. And then down here, this one says it starts with an A and ends with an O. Now, I don't know why. I've never had to use those type of, I've had to use a little bit. Sometimes people had customer IDs or VIN numbers for cars that had a letter or number in a specific spot. So I needed to hit, in the fourth position, it's going to have an R, or it's going to have a 5. I could do that, but that's less common. But so let's go down here and we can say, it's going to say, let's select where it has United in the name. So if I say select, let's do name, continent, population from world, okay, where name like, okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put, so it wants us to put in United. Now, I think all of them have, I'm going to go ahead and put this. So this is going to say, this is going to grab everything that begins with the word United. Okay, so I've got United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, and United States. So the word United is always at the very beginning. So it doesn't matter if I were then to put this whole thing within, because there aren't any that have it somewhere else. But let's just go ahead and say, look, let me start with all countries that begin with the letter N. So I've got Namibia, Nauru, Nepal, Netherlands. These now, I'm going to get rid of this one. This one says it has to end with the letter N. So this is Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, Bahrain. And then this has N anywhere in the word. So whether it's at the beginning, Albania has it in the middle. Okay. It's also how you could find, if I wanted to find names that have more than one word, then I would be looking for a space in there. So I could say, look, you have to have a space somewhere in there. And so I have now all the ones that have multiple words because I'm just looking for those spaces. And if I say I only want one word, so I'm saying not like, now I'm only going to get the one word names. Okay, so that is a useful way to use this space and the wildcard. But let's go ahead and go back to what it asked for, which is United. So that's how we've got United Kingdom, United Arab Emirates, and the United States. Okay, and then it only wants the name, and that's how we get our smiley face. So here's number 7. It asks for, there's 2 ways to be big. So this one says, I want you to be big by either area or population. Okay, so what we're going to end up doing is we're going to say select name. What does it want us to say? Name, population, and area from world where. So I'm going to do area is greater than or equal to, what does it want? 3 million. Okay, so that's going to be 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or population, okay, is greater than or equal to, what does it say? 250 million. So 250, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this gives me countries that are, so there are however many there are here, 3, 6, 8. And so these are big in population or big in area. And then there are a few like China and the United States that are big on both. Okay, they would meet both criteria. Okay, and that is going to come into play because now number 8, they want us to say, I want it to be, you're either big by area or big by population, but not both. And they want us to use this XOR, this exclusive OR, I only very rarely use. So let me show, I'm just going to go ahead and select this down. Okay, and so it's going to say, look, I want this. Okay, and then, so I've got, here's the ones that are So if I want, let's see, I want those that would have a big area but a small population. So now if I'm going to say, okay, so how many do I have that are have and population less than or equal to, okay, so they're saying Australia should be included because it has a big area but a small population, okay, and then it wants us to grab, well, which one of those have a big population but a small area? So I'm going to go ahead and say population is, it doesn't matter the order, but it's easier for me to get my head around if I say population is greater than and area is less than. I think I've made that, the little alligator going the wrong way there. Okay, so that's Indonesia, and they want us to include that. So essentially what they want is, I'm going to grab this one. Area is greater than, and the population is less than, right? It wants us to combine those. So you could do this as an or statement. This is the way I would normally have thought it. Or the population is greater than 250 million. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that. And or the population is bigger than 250 million, but the country is very small. So I'm going to say area is less than or equal to 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is what it wants. Okay, but the way it wants it, so I've got these countries and Russia, so it's giving me the smiley face, but the way it wants me to do it is actually to just do, I'm going to go ahead and go back to say area, and it wants me to, so the area is greater than this, X or the population is greater than 250 million, but not both. Okay, so this is saying, look, I want countries that have an area bigger than 3 million, exclusive or it has a population greater than 250 million, but if it has one, it cannot have the other. So sometimes people write this XOR as a but not. Okay, and in fact, I believe I can use but not. Nope. How about and not? Okay, that would work as well. So I had written and not, but I'm going to end up with, I want to end with this XOR because that's what the question is asking for. I just don't want you to get too hung up on it because I don't think I used this in my first 10 years of using SQL, so it's not a big deal, okay? But it does kind of make things a little bit faster sometimes. Okay, so now we're going to go to rounding, and they're going to explain the round function here, so I'm going to right-click on it and open it up in a new tab. And so round is just going to say, look, I can round it. So you put the number in, or in this case, we're going to point it to like population or GDP. And this is going to say, I'm going to round it to, so 0 means there's no decimal places. 1 is there's 1. I can then start putting in these negatives, which we'll use in a second. I don't use those, but they want us to understand that functionality. So we'll go back here. So it says, look, I want the name and population in millions and the GDP in billions. So let's go ahead for those in Latin America. So I'm going to do, so let's do select, name, population. Let's just put GDP from world where continent is equal to South America. So we'll just start there. Okay, so now I've got the population and the GDP. Okay, then it wants me to say, look, I want to round this to millions. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And GDP is going to be billions. So I'm going to put 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So now I've got, there's 42 million and 477 billion in GDP. Okay, and then what it wants us to do is wrap those in a round function. So I'm going to say round, and it wants it to what? 2 decimal places. Okay, so I want this, comma 2, and then I want to do round GDP, comma 2, and I'm just going to put that on a different. So I've got the population rounded, GDP rounded. So we should see the number of decimal places move over here so that I've got 42.67 and 477.03. Okay. Now I'm down on number 10 where it wants the $1 trillion economies. This is where it wants when it says round to the nearest thousand, which is kind of a weird thing, but it's going to use this -3 here to say, look, instead of showing 7254, show 7,000. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say select name. I'm going to put the total GDP, and then let's go ahead and put GDP. Let's do it in. Then we'll round it to. We'll round GDP to this -3. Okay, from world where GDP is greater than or equal to. I'm just going to copy this. That's 12 zeros. Okay. So I've got, they don't want this, they only want this rounded one. So let's go ahead though and show what we've got. I've got GDP, because those look like they're the same. So let's go ahead and I'm going to put GDP in billions. So that's 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So there's 9 zeros there. Okay, so this is showing it in billions. So all of these are going to have more than one. They're going to be more than 1,000, right? Because a trillion is 1,000 billion. So I'm going to go ahead and put GDP divided by. Let's just go ahead and copy this. So that's 9 zeros. It's a 1 followed by 9 zeros. Okay, and I'm just going to let's just go ahead and I'm just going to do this. Okay, so I've got. So that's GDP with 3 decimal places. Okay, now if I do 2 decimal places, 1 decimal place. Okay, now if I do 0, obviously there'll be no decimal places. And then watch what happens when I start doing like -1. Goes 15, 60, -2, okay, and -3. Okay, so it says show per capita GDP. Okay, rounded to the nearest thousand. So instead of GDP in billions, it's going to be GDP divided by population. Okay, and that's what they want. Okay, so number 11 wants to show us this length function, and it wants us to find countries where the name and the capital are the same length, like they both have 6 characters. I'm going to show it first. So I'm going to right click on this, and so what it's going to tell us is I can push in a field, and it's going to return the length and say, oh, that's 5 characters. Okay. So I created one in Excel. I'm going to go ahead and show this right here, where I put all these first names. This is from that Excel practice test. Okay, and I've created over here so that you can see this, so that you'll see that this is saying the length of Lex is 3. Now I've actually pointed it to cell D6 so that I can bring this down, right? So that it's saying, hey, how many characters are there? And then I did the same thing over here. So this is the length of F6, Luther. And then in Excel, and oh, by the way, in Excel it uses the len function, or it's called len. That's the way it does it. And so and same thing in Tableau. And then SQL uses length. Okay, so then if I wanted to do this in Excel, I'd say, look, I want these 2 numbers to be equal. So what I did was I said, look, just subtract those 2 numbers. And if they're equal to 0, so Diane Sawyer and Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has 6 letters in his first name and 6 letters in his last name. The other way you can do it is I used an if function. And so I said is equal to, I said if logical test. So that means if E6 is equal to G6, comma, and then it's going to say, what do you want me to type if it's true? And what do you want me to type if it's false? And the default is it'll just say true or false. So I'm just going to say, look, if it's a match, if those 2 are the same, just type in the word match. Okay. I could also, which is what I did here, so I could just see, oh, these 4 are the matches. If I said, you know what, I want it to say not a match, if they don't, then I could say not a match. and it would put that in. Okay, so I've written these so that they're a little bit bigger about what I put in, and we're going to essentially be doing the same thing here in SQL. So we're going to go ahead and say, so let's go ahead and say select. Let's go ahead and do name, length of name, capital, and length of capital. From world. Okay, so let's just do that. So this is going to grab, hey, Afghanistan is 11 characters, but Kabul is 5. So we want this to be, we only want the ones where these are equal to each other. So we're just going to say where length name is equal to length capital. And now they're saying, hey, they only want the name and the capital, and I've included the columns here that have the length. So Algeria and Algiers, Angola and Luanda, and so on. I have the length are the same, and so it says, hey, I don't want this, and I don't want that. Okay. Now notice the other thing here, if I put a comma here at the end, so it would say like from world, it's actually going to throw an error because it wants no comma between after the last column that you're pulling. So select name, comma, capital, where the length of the name is equal to the length of the capital. That's what it wants. So down here on number 12, it wants me to have both start with the letter S, and then it's going to say, but I don't want it to be the same word. So let's start with that first part. Let's go ahead and say select. We've got the name, and I'm going to return left, just is like the left function in Excel. So I'm going to grab the first character of it, and then I'm going to have capital and left capital 1 from world. Okay, so this is going to say, look, what's the first letter of the country and what's the first letter of the capital? And it wants it where they match. Okay. And then it says, but I don't want it to be the same word. So let's go ahead. So we'll worry about that one in just a second. So let's just go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and copy these and say where, and then I'm going to just delete this stuff here in the middle. So this should give me where, it starts with an A and the capital starts with an A. Okay, so that's great. Now they're going to want me to get rid of this column. And then it says, and the first, where the, I'm just going to put, and the name is not equal to, so they want you to use this one, not equal to capital. Okay, so now if I get rid of these should be, I think this is going to actually solve it. Okay, so they don't want them to be the same, but I'm actually going to say which ones are the same. Okay, so Djibouti, Luxembourg, San Marino, and Singapore. So these are all 4 of these are the same. And obviously, if the name is the same, the first letter is going to be the same. Okay, now I prefer to use, instead of using this for not equal, the 2 carets, or the greater than and less than sign next to each other, I prefer to use exclamation point equal. So you've got equals and not equal. Okay, and that one works, but so whichever one you find more intuitive. Okay, so you've got where left, so it's got the first letters the same, but the names are actually not the same. Okay, and that's what he should have put here, because otherwise then we got to figure out, does it have more than one word or not? Okay. Okay, I've slid down here to 13. Now, if it's blank, so we could type this in. I'm going to click, if it's blank, you can click this restore default and see what it says. So select name from world, okay, and it wants a country that has all the vowels but no spaces. So let's just go ahead and do, where name, like, and I'm going to go ahead and put the spaces in. I showed you this a little bit earlier. So now I have, this is going to find where the names have like more than one word because there's a space in it. Okay, and now if I say not like, okay, so now I'm only going to have, it's one word. Okay, so this one says, I want all the vowels and no spaces. So now we've got, the name's not going to have, now it's not going to have any spaces, but if I wanted to, we'll come back to that one. We want to make sure it has all the vowels in it. So we're going to say where name, like, and now we've got to do, this is actually, I haven't found, there's an easier way to do it. So now I have to say it's got a somewhere in it and name, like. So we're literally going to do all of this for each A and E. So I'm going to go ahead and put, I'm going to go ahead and name like, so I'm going to try AEI. Okay, so this gives me countries that have an A, an E, and an I in their names. Okay, so now I'm going to say a name like O, and name like U. Okay, so this is one that has all of these, except they say, look, we don't want Equatorial Guinea and Dominican Republic because it has more than one word, right? So now we're going to say, I've got this one. I'm going to put that and clause on the next line. I'm going to say and name not like, and this is where we did, hey, can't have a space. So this is just what we had earlier. Now I'll put the semicolon at the end. Okay. Now, you might just say, this kind of seems kind of crazy, and it is. And I would tend to put these in parentheses. So I've got this here. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to see, or I would put these then in parentheses so that you've got, and it doesn't matter if I have a space there, but that way I can see, hey, I've got one grouping here. It's got to have all the vowels, but it can't have any spaces. Okay, and now it's going to say Mozambique. Okay, so people want to use an in, and you can't do that if you're combining it with a wildcard because you have to use like. So you have to kind of do it manually like this, and it's a little bit of a pain. Okay, but that's what this one looks like. I'm going to go ahead and hit restore default so that we've got the like be and not like so that we've got that, but I just wanted to show you that one. Okay, and that's where we're going to end. So that is the end of this one. I'm going to start a new video. In the next video, we'll go up here to the top because this one is 42 minutes. In the next video, I'll go ahead and do the select from Nobel.